What's up, runners? Welcome to the Let's Run Fit podcast. I'm your host, B Lit. As a running coach, I realized how many runners really wanted to know how to make themselves better and they had no idea how to get there. So here I am to help out any athlete who wants to know more about the sport of running. From the lifelong runner to the brand new runner, there's always something to learn here on the Let's Run Fit podcast. So runners mark, let's go. Hey runners, welcome to the Let's Run Fit podcast. I'm so happy that you are here and tuning in with me today. Today we're going to be talking about the different aspects of running shoes, what to know, how to buy them, where to go, and everything in between. So let's sprint right in, shall we? When you first decide that you want to buy a new pair of shoes, you need to decide what you're wanting to do in the shoe itself and whether you are wanting to run, walk, or lift, because all three of these types of shoes are going to have a different shoe itself. The best thing that you can do is when you get to the store, preferably your local running store, so you have someone who actually has knowledge of the shoes and what their purposes are and for, and not just somebody who kind of showed up to work that day, let them know what your plans with the shoe is. That way they can make sure to get you in the correct type of shoe and not just the correct fitting shoe. A good example of how you could be fitted into the wrong type of shoe would be if you knew you wanted to do a fitness class that has a lot of lateral movement, so going side to side. Because if you don't tell the shoe store this and that you just want a pair of shoes that are nice and squishy, they could put you in a max cushion high height shoe that's going to have you very high off the ground and have you at a higher risk for twisting your ankle. The shoe itself was great, it just wasn't great for what you were wanting. Another version could be if you knew you were going to be running really long distances and you didn't tell them that, and they put you in a very low cushion shoe that's made more for like lifting, but like it's not going to work for what you're wanting because it has zero support for running. Of the three different types of shoes, so the lifting, running, and walking shoe, the running shoe is going to be the most versatile because you could definitely walk in a running shoe if you knew you're kind of wanting to do a mixture of both, but you would not be able to run in a walking shoe, so if you wanted both, you would definitely need to get a running shoe itself. Their shoes are just made different. A walking shoe has a much flatter base. It's made to keep you a little bit more stable, and the rocker inside of it, we'll explain what a rocker is in a little while, but it's made for more of a stride for someone who is walking, and the cushion levels match that as well. A running shoe, it's going to have the rocker in it that's going to propel you forward a lot more, and the cushion levels are going to be based off what makes you happiest. In that case, some people want a high cushion shoe, others like a more minimalist shoe. The amount that you can get all really depends on what trend's going on at that point in time. So for a while, it was all about the minimalist barefoot shoe, but now max cushioning shoes are all the rage, and I'm sure it's going to change again soon as well. So I always tell people to don't go based off what's popular, but go based off what feels best on your foot. A very popular question that people always like to ask is how long is a shoe supposed to last? All shoes are going to range, but on average, it's going to be about 400-ish miles. So it's normally about 6 months to a year. Depends on, how much you're running, how much you're walking, and if you're rotating your shoes, if that is going to be an accurate estimate for you. All of these things can also change based off your running gait as well. Your running gait is going to be the actual way that you run. So if you have a higher cadence, so that's your steps per minute, then you're going to wear a shoe out much faster than if you have someone who has a longer stride and a lower cadence. You're also going to wear your shoe out faster if you do not rotate your shoe like I had mentioned just a while ago. This means that you have more than one pair, so you have at least two, and that every other day you change shoes. And when you do this, it just helps because there is foam in that shoe. It feels like a solid piece of something. Normally we always say rubber, but it is an actual foam, and that does have to decompress just like any other type of foam, anything. And if you wear it in its compressed state, it's going to cause damage and cause it to stay compressed much sooner and run out, and you're going to lose those cushioning benefits and those supportive benefits that were built into the shoe. Another question that people like to ask is about what an actual running shoe is made of. And there are a couple different pieces that kind of build together to create a shoe. So I'm going to go through them with you right now, just so that way you have that knowledge. So when you get to the store, you know what they're talking about. Because sometimes, we're at the running store and the people that work there, including myself, we kind of get a little ahead of ourselves and we forget that you don't know all of the terms that are second nature to us. So this way you'll have that knowledge ready. So the first aspect we're going to talk about is the base of the shoe. These are all going to be made up of different types of foam like mentioned before. There are going to be some that are all one solid piece, and there are going to be some that have air inserted into them, and others that are going to be shaped like little boxes that are kind of squished together that way. It all depends on the shoe model and the brand, what type of foam it is, and how that foam works. Now the foam will change how heavy a shoe is and the height of the shoe. It'll also determine on if it's going to be springy or how soft the shoe feels as well. Some people really want that softer ride, while others, they don't really like that. I always say it's kind of the same way that some people want to sleep on a really super soft mattress, while others want to sleep on a very firm mattress. It's all based on their bodies and what feels the best when it comes to the actual amount of cushioning that you want built into that foam. Along with the base, we also have the upper of the shoe. This is going to be that cloth part of the shoe that you actually have the laces built into. Depending on what kind of textile that was used, it's either going to be very, very breathable, or it's going to be a little bit more waterproof. And it just all depends on what you're wanting that shoe to actually be. The part that's going to be probably most important when it comes to how comfortable the shoe is on your foot is going to be the toe box. This is the space that's in the front of the shoe. It's going to determine how much room your toes have to spread out, and depending on how wide your foot is, depends on how much room you need. You also want at least a half a thumbnail to a full thumbnail worth of space at the front of the shoe if you're going to be walking or running in them or working in them for a full day and not just small amounts of time. Most people think that your toe needs to be within like a teeny tiny amount of space to the front of the shoe, but your foot swells during the day. So if you're going to be running in them especially, you're going to want to make sure you have space for your foot to expand as it swells, or you're going to end up with bruised toes and your foot's just going to generally be very, very achy. So you want a little bit more space than what most people think. But there is a limit on how much space. You don't want too much space because you don't need to be sliding the shoe either. That's why we always say about half a thumbnail to a full thumbnail worth of space. The size of the toe box is really going to be based off your foot, of how much space you need. So if you do have a wider foot, you're going to need a larger toe box than someone with a very narrow foot. Sometimes if you have a wider foot, you can get a shoe with a wide toe box that just naturally fits, and you won't have to go sit there and try to find a shoe that is a wide, because it is a little bit more difficult to find shoes that are wides in stock in most shoe stores. And again, all of this comfort is all based off your foot. So here's an aspect that most people do not know about, and that all shoes have what's called a heel drop. This is how much higher the back of your shoe sits compared to the front of your shoe. They range from a zero drop shoe, like the most popular brand for those would be Ultras, to higher drop shoes, and the most popular brand for those are normally Brooks. Both of those unpaid advertisements, they're just, popular shoe brands that have both of those features. So when you have a higher drop shoe, it puts a little bit more pressure on your knees than when you have a lower drop shoe, because those put a little bit more pressure on your ankles. Now, this isn't going to say that you're going to feel a difference and that everyone needs that middle of the line so nothing hurts in quotation, or that, oh, I just put on a high drop shoe, now my knees are killing me. It doesn't really work that way. It's just where a little bit more pressure gets added, and that can add up over time to cause overuse injuries in someone who's already predispositioned to have an issue. Because again, it's all based off body mechanics. We can't just sit there and look at you and say this shoe fits everybody, because it doesn't work that way. No two bodies are built the same, so there's no two people that are going to have the same exact perfect drop zone of where they need their heel to be sitting in the shoe to be most comfortable. It's all going to be different depending on who you are. So for example, I run in a shoe that ranges from 0 drop all the way up to 12 drops. I literally have a little bit of it all. And it's not like I can't have a good run in one of them or that I'm going to feel pain in one of them. I rotate just so that way no parts of my leg actually gets used to that one drop range and starts to overcompensate and adapt too strong and cause overuse injuries. I make sure that all of my muscles and tendons and everything are shrinking equally by kind of ranging between all of the drops. Now, this does not work for everybody. Not everybody can do that. So you need to make sure that you really see what your body can do and see how those drops feel. Like I said, I range perfect. Like when I race, my happy zone, that perfect area is about a 6 millimeter drop. But I do speed work in a 12 millimeter or a 0 millimeter. I rotate between them. This, again, it all just helps your muscles not have overuse injuries as easily, and it helps your shoes last longer when you rotate. When someone's talking about how tall a shoe actually looks, that is going to be the stack height. So this is what they're talking about when they talk about the physical height of the shoe itself. The heel drop that we were just talking about is going to be inside the shoe and is not noticeable from the outside. The stack height is what you notice from the outside. You can have a 0 drop shoe that's going to have a very high stack height because of the cushioning. You can also have a very low shoe with stack height that has a very high heel drop. One does not equal the other. But a stack height does make you taller. So you need to think about that when you're purchasing the shoe, because it's all going to be based off how high you are off the ground. If you know you're going to be on trails or doing workouts with those lateral movements like mentioned before, those are going to be the things you want to think about when you're thinking about how high of a stack height you want, because you don't want to accidentally roll your ankle. So things like trail runs and things like that, you would want to be a lot lower to the ground just in case. But if you know you're just going forward and like running a marathon, you could do something with a higher stack and not have to worry as much about rolling your ankle unless you're stepping on something. So it's all based off what you're doing, how that stack height really comes into play. A lot of it's also personal preference, because it does change the look of the shoe a lot more than any of the other aspects. And some people don't want a shoe that looks very, clunky. So you all have to look to see what fits best when it comes to what it feels like when you're wearing it versus what it looks like on the outside. Because as much as we say at a shoe store that don't judge off the looks, we're going to judge off the look of the shoe. It's just human nature. The next thing we're going to talk about is the support that the shoe offers. We have neutral and support shoes. So essentially anyone who has a neutral foot could wear a support shoe and be okay. It's not going to hurt you really, so to speak. But if you need a support shoe and you're wearing a neutral shoe, that can hurt you and you need to be very, very careful. So this is all going to be talking about the support in the shoe that helps you with what's called pronation. Pronation is the medical term for when your ankles are trying to roll in as you're walking. There's also supination, where your ankles are trying to roll outwards. So when you have what's called a support shoe, it's going to be a little bit more firm cushioning around that inside area where the arch is, that's going to help support your foot from that rolling in. So essentially what it's doing is your foot's trying to roll down, it's pushing back with that firmer cushioning to keep your foot up. And so that way you're going to have more of a normal like gait. While everyone pronates to a point and it is just part of their natural running, this can start to cause pain over time if you are rolling in too far. So that's why you would want a support shoe to kind of help straighten you out, and it kind of just makes the shoe a little bit more comfortable. The support normally has things also like guide rails that go all the way around what's called the heel cup, which is the full back of the shoe, that just keeps your ankle a little bit more stable than if you were in a neutral shoe. These also naturally have a little bit more arch support as well, so it's good for people with really high arches who need that little extra kind of arch balance up inside that shoe. On the other side of the shoe spectrum is the neutral shoe, which is not exactly the exact opposite of a support shoe, because they are going to have a lot of similarities in the terms of how the shoe is made. The biggest difference is it's not going to have that guide rail and that extra foam cushion. So if you have a neutral ankle and a neutral step, then you don't really need that extra support. So you can kind of keep and save yourself that extra weight that comes with that extra firm foam. If you do have that neutral foot, remember, again, you can wear a support shoe. It's not going to really hurt you. It's not going to really help you, but it's not going to really hurt you. But if you need a support shoe, please do not wear a neutral shoe, because that is going to start to hurt. The thing that everyone loves to talk about when it comes to shoes is the cushion level, because just like what it sounds like, it's how soft of a shoe that you're going to be putting on your foot. So some shoes are going to have very, very firm, low cushion and sit very low to the ground. It's going to feel very natural, like a barefoot run. But there's also on the other end, the maximal shoes. These are going to be the ones that have that very thick, soft cushion that feels like you're running or sitting on a pillow. These types of cushions range just based off the purpose of the shoe. You can have a mid-cushion shoe, a high-cushion shoe, whatever it is that you're looking for. So if you're in track, you're going to need something that's a lot lower cushion, just because you're already running on that rubberized track. So you don't need to have as much cushion because you're not running on the hard asphalt or cement. But if you are on that asphalt or cement, you're going to need a little bit more cushion to kind of have that like anti-fatigue mount under your foot to really help with that overall comfort level in a long term. All of these cushion levels that you need to think about is just where are you going to be doing the majority of your running or walking. Because if you're going to be on hard surfaces, you're going to need a much more cushioned shoe to help with the comfort and support in long term to prevent pain coming, up your, legs into your back than if you were going to be on a very plush area like the grass or a track and all of those kind of things. So there's lots of technology built into a track, and there's lots of technology built into a shoe, and there is a point where you don't really need that extra cushioning because it's not going to help you. It's just going to add weight, because that cushion does add a lot of weight because it does add a lot of foam. So you really have to kind of make that, checks and balance of what's going to be best for you. Something that not a lot of people think about when it comes to buying a shoe is the laces themselves. So normally you're going to have a pretty standard lace when you buy it, but some of them are going to be very, very silky that it comes untied a lot, while others are going to be made of a much better material, a little wider, a little flatter, not as silky and soft, so they're going to stay tied a little bit better. You need to think about this when you're looking at a running shoe, and obviously most of the time you're going to have to buy the laces separate because you don't want to just ignore a very good quality shoe just because it came with crappy laces, because you can always replace the lace afterwards. There's nothing wrong with that. The biggest thing is you just don't want to be stopping to have to retie your shoes every 5 seconds. Or in the case of one pair of shoes I have that I wear to work, they don't come untied, but they come loose because the actual lace is so silky that it just keeps kind of working its way undone, and it's very frustrating that I have to tie my shoe 3 times a day, even though it never actually comes untied. I really need to replace the laces in that shoe, but the school year is almost over, so I just can't do it. But there's just a couple things that you can look for. So thicker laces can kind of help keep it a little tighter. Saucony is very, very good at having quality, good, squishy laces that like to stay tied really well. Now there's also like that traditional lace that you think of that's like that wide soft cloth that's going to have enough traction on itself to stay tied. But if you are someone who's having a lot of issues with your laces not staying the correct level of tightness, you can always get the no-tie laces. No-tie laces do not have to be a no support shoe lace of itself. They have ones that are going to have like little bumps in them, things like that can keep it tighter, so that way, it can't really come through. They also have ones that are just one giant circle where it's kind of like a, pinch and, scrunch. I don't know the exact term for it, but, you pinch the little thingy, you move the little plastic piece down, and then you let it go and it's pinched closed so it can't move. That way you can slip your shoe on and off with the laces in there, but it still supports your foot and keeps your foot supported and tight and where the actual shoe is held on properly and not too loose. You just got to make sure that you kind of experiment because everyone needs something different. Some people will want a shoe that's tied a little bit tighter, some want it a little looser. Again, it's all based off your foot and there is no magic solution. Earlier in the episode, I mentioned something called a rocker. This is the last main aspect of shoes itself that you kind of need to have a little bit of knowledge on when you go in. So a rocker is going to be put into every shoe. Just the amount of rocker really just depends on what shoe you're buying. So the purpose of a rocker is to propel you forward. So it's almost like it kind of forces you to roll. Most of the time they're called meta rockers and things like that. So it's designed as like a plate that goes inside the foam that when you step, it takes your energy and propels it forward. So it actually has the purpose of keeping you going and keeping all of that momentum that you have going forward instead of being transferred into the ground. Because if you know anything about physics, you cannot create power or anything like that. All you can do is transfer it to another place, and every time you step, some of that power is being transferred into the ground. So when you have these rockers, depending on the level of technology that's put into it, it's going to take that energy, instead of letting it be transferred, it's going to store it and spring it back up. That's why it can be a little off-putting when you first wear a rocker when you're not used to having one, because a lot of cheap shoes that you buy, if you buy a $20 pair of sneakers, it does not have a rocker in it, I promise. It might be built with a little bit of a curve, but it does not have a rocker. So it's a little off-putting, like I said, because you're not used to it. You're not used to feeling your energy be stored and sprung back into your foot to help keep you going forward. But these are extremely useful if you're going to be walking or running, because it helps you save energy, because all the energy that's being transferred into the ground, you have to recreate that energy and reuse your muscles to keep powering yourself forward, while the rocker is almost like a little cheat sheet that's built into the shoe to help you go. There are different kinds. They're just like the basic ones, but they can get as fancy as like the nylon and carbon plates that are to the point where they're so effective. There's actually been conversations about if they need to be banned in true elite sports. Luckily, so far, they haven't been, but there might be a day where someone's like, all right, this is too much of an advantage. But at this point, if you're an elite runner, you're more than likely running in some type of a carbon or nylon plate shoe, so it's fine. But that's how effective that they can be, that it creates these conversations. So if you are a beginner runner, that can help you kind of get a little rid of some of that soreness that can build up just based off your body having to, take all of that energy and push it forward when it's not used to it anymore. The last thing that I want to talk about today is going to be the different types of running shoes that you can find. So this is going to be your road shoe, your trail shoe, and your spike. So all of these, as you can tell, are going to be very, very specialized. So if you have a road shoe, it's made to be on a flat surface like a sidewalk or a street, anything that's just flat and hard and what most road races would be on. Almost every road race is going to be on a closed section of road, some type of sidewalk. Very rare is a road race actually going to be on grass. So this is just any flat, even surface that's made to propel you forward. So a road shoe is going to take that, and all the technology built into it is going to be based off you hitting a flat, hard surface and springing you forward. Now, if you're looking at a trail shoe, again, it's just like it sounds. It's going to be for trails. So they're going to be built a little bit different because they're going to have a little bit more stability in them. They're normally a little bit wider of a base on the shoe just to kind of help with that stability. It's going to have a lot more traction built into whatever the actual lower part of the shoe is made of, because when you're running on trails, you're going to be on like moss and wet stuff and mud. So you got to be a little bit more careful because you're in nature. There's going to be water and rain, and you never know what's going to be there. So you've got to be a little bit more careful. And the trail shoe is going to be much more supportive of your running journey over those uneven surfaces because they're going to help keep you upright and not twisting your ankle. The last option is going to be your spike. This is just, again, exactly what it sounds like. It's an extremely lightweight shoe that has very pointy little spikes coming out of the bottom. These are going to be for people who are running. So these are normally people who are race running. So this is going to be like your track spike or your cross country spike. The biggest difference between those two is just track spikes are a little bit shorter than a cross country spike because one is going into a rubber track while the other is going into the grass. But it's just made to help with that traction because, again, grass gets wet. And I know every single one of us at some point in our childhood was running across the grass and just slipped and fell on our bottoms. And that's what those spikes are there to prevent. So when you're racing and you're going those very fast speeds, you have that actual true little stability going on to help you with your running so you can keep going forward and not have to worry about falling. So now that we've gone through all of the aspects of the shoe itself and the types, I want to go into where to buy them. So I've mentioned again earlier in the episode, you want to go to somewhere that specializes in shoes for exercise and running. Now, you would think this could just be any outlet store, like the most popular ones that you think about online, but I desperately want to talk you out of this. Outlet stores that sell dress shoes and other types of shoes, they do not have the knowledge about what shoe is going to be best for your running and your exercise and what's going to be best for your health. They're only going to have a focus on selling you a shoe. And that's all the knowledge they're going to have. They're barely even going to know how much space you need in that shoe if they are helping you. Because when it comes to a running shoe, just because it says running on the shoe does not mean it's a good shoe for running. They can put, again, whatever they want on that label. And if you're online, it's even worse because you can search running shoe, find the cheapest one, buy it. But again, doesn't mean it's actually made for running. They can just put running shoe on there. It also doesn't mean that it's going to fit correctly, even if it somehow was a quality shoe when you got lucky. Because even if it is a quality shoe, it might not be a quality shoe for you. And when I say just because it says it's running, that means even the big brands that are known for running. Because any brand company that is a multi-million or billion-dollar company, they're not just catering to those who have the big money to pay for the big technology. They also want to sell shoes to the little nobody who knows nothing but only has like a little bit of money. So they're going to have that wide range of prices and quality so that way they can sell shoes to more people. So when it comes to buying a running shoe, you want to make sure it's going to be comfortable and properly fitted. This means you need to have someone take you through the process of seeing if you are going to be pronating or supernating or neutral. You need them to see what your stride looks like, and you need to make sure there's enough space in the shoe that you're not, spilling over the edges or going too far into the front, because not all shoes are made equal for all workouts, and not all shoes are going to be comfortable to each individual person. I know there's a shoe brand that is one of the most popular running shoe brands on the planet, but for me personally, I cannot wear them. I went on a run and walked home barefoot as opposed to keeping this shoe on my foot for the 1.5 mile walk home, because it was more comfortable to walk on hot concrete with stones and everything else than to keep this shoe on for my foot. And it's one of the most popular shoe brands in the world. So it's not based off one size fits all. You have to make sure that you have a shoe that's going to be comfortable for you in the long term and the purpose that you're wanting that shoe. So if you're going to those random chain chain stores that are at the mall and things like that, they're not going to have the training to help you through that process. And they're normally not going to have the return policy to help you through that process either, because it might feel good in the store, but by the time you get home, it might not feel good anymore. So you really need to make sure that you have someone who actually gives any cares at all about your running, and an actual running store does this. There are some chain running stores out there that can help you, but mostly I say local running stores because it's always better to shop local. This isn't a plug for anyone in particular. I am always a fan of small business owners, because then when you buy that pair of shoes, you're not buying a second yacht or a plane or some fancy vacation. You're buying a child, dance classes or that ice cream treat that they really want. And that just means so much more to anyone who is actually trying to, make a living, as opposed to someone who's just trying to buy that extra yacht. So always shop local. It's just what I say. Plus, I feel like the local stores, they have a little bit more family aspect to them. And when they train someone, they're much more careful about their training because they don't have a brand name to fall back on, because they need you to be there because you trust them and not for anything else. So go to a store that focuses on running, and it will change your life. Your feet will be better. You can find training partners and training groups at these stores as well. They promote everything. So you're going to know that you're going to be getting good advice that's based off your personal needs, and you'll be ready to go. Because like you've noticed, I went through a lot. There's so many aspects of a shoe that makes them the way they are. And it's so particular based off of you and your goals. And there's so much technology and styles. And there really is something for every foot out there. You just have to find the store, get fitted, and you'll be thankful for it. So go out, get you a new pair of shoes that fits well and feels comfortable, and have a happy, wonderful, comfortable run. I'll see you next time, guys. Thanks so much, runners, for spending time with me and listening to this episode. If you like what you heard, please hit that subscribe button and leave me a review. I always love to hear from my listeners. And if you want more Let's Run Fit in your life, find me on Instagram at Let's Run Fit with BLit. Until next time, runners. The information in this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for medical or professional advice. Please always consult a medical professional if you're seeking medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The Let's Run Fit podcast is not liable for risk or issues associated with using or acting upon the information in this podcast.